Well, let's get started into Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. I'm going to label each one of these videos Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and so on, Pike's M and D. Then that way you can see them sequentially, because as the 10 minutes are up for my video, some of them are probably going to cut me off in the middle of a thought, and so I'll just carry on that thought in the next video. Two reasons, I think, for engaging the text that are very important. The lesser important reason is so that we can refute the critics when they miscontext morals and dogma. There's no more miscontexted book except for the Holy Bible in all of Israel, as far as I'm concerned. The critics are determined to make a mess of what Pike is saying. The more important reason, of course, is so that we can appreciate grabbing those nuggets of gold in morals and dogma and seeing the ideology of Freemasonry as Pike understood that ideology. So let's engage the text. Let's get on with the text. I have to thank my Masonic brother David Nipper. He gave me some good insights in Lodge the other night. My worshipful master just asked me just shortly before the meeting, like just a couple of minutes, if I was ready to prepare a lecture. And the thought got into my mind, well, I want to do morals and dogma, so yeah, sure, I'll give a lecture. As the education officer, that's part of my duty. So I discussed the first couple of chapters in Pike's book with the brothers. So it was a good warm-up for this video. Pike begins on the very first page. Force unregulated or ill-regulated is not only wasted in the void, like that of the gunpowder burned in the open air, and steam confined by science, but striking in the dark and its blows meeting only the air, they recoil and bruise itself. And about this point you go, what? That doesn't make any sense. To translate this, Pike is simply saying if we don't manage force such as steam or gunpowder, if we don't control it, it doesn't benefit us. Now his description of if gunpowder is burned in the open air or steam is just allowed to go helter-skelter without confining it into a tube and giving it a direction so that it can be used usefully for us, he says, striking in the dark and it blows meeting only the air, they recoil and bruise itself. Well, that's a poetic description, in my opinion. Bruising only occurs in living tissue. Gunpowder doesn't bruise, steam doesn't bruise. He's simply saying that there's no effect that is useful for we humans. He's being very human-centric here. He's trying to bring out a point to get us to think in a certain way, to understand truth and reality in a certain way. And he goes on, it is destruction and ruin. It's no benefit to us. And then he says, it is the volcano, the earthquake, the cyclone, not growth and progress. And here I think Pike is mistaken. The volcano, the earthquake, and the cyclone is very beneficial to us when they happen, if we know what to do with them. If they're unregulated, yes, the volcano can completely destroy whole villages, towns, and cities. However, 1,000,000 years ago, the volcanoes that went off, we can now use that soil to plant our crops. So he's trying to give us an immediate context for us alive right now in our short 70-year human lifespan. He's saying if everything is just unregulated, then there is no progress. There is no help or benefit to we humans. And then he says, it is Polyphemus blinded, striking at random, and falling headlong among the sharp rocks by the impetus of his own blows. We have to be somewhat familiar with some of the Greek classical mythologies to understand some of his allusions. Polyphemus, of course, was the one-eyed cyclops that trapped Odysseus and his men in his cave and was eating them. And through forms of trickery, they sheared the sheep. He would count the sheep going out every day so that he caught the men if they were trying to sneak out. They sheared the sheep and put the sheepskins over their back, and they snuck out and then came back. They gave him beer, wine, whatever, alcoholic beverages, got him drunk, and then they stabbed his eye out with a big beam. And he was all in a rage, and he was throwing rocks everywhere as they escaped and got on their ships and sailed away. And then Odysseus made the mistake of taunting him, and of course that cost him several years of extra wandering. But so the idea is, blind Polyphemus could not stop the men from escaping. He was helpless. It was random throwing of rocks. There was no control. It was of no effect. That's what he's saying. He says, the blind force of the people. Now, he brings it from nature. See, we're tied in with nature, the volcano, the earthquake. We are a part of nature as people. And then he brings it to the people. The blind force of the people itself is a force that must be economized and also managed. And that's true. Otherwise, all you have is anarchy and chaos. And that is not beneficial to everybody. Pike's ideology here is to do that which is right because it is right. To do what is good because it is good. To benefit, help humanity have the comforts of life, the freedoms to be able to do what they feel best, etc. Tyrannies and despotism are anathema to Freemasonry. Dictatorships, that's anathema to Freemasonry. We fight for the freedom of the people, but the people have to be managed, governed, and economized, just exactly like the force of steam, lifting the ponderous iron arms and turning the large wheels. Think of the old steamboats on the Mississippi in Mark Twain's day. Those wheels went around because of steam power. In the trains, in the early trains, it was fire that developed the heat that turned the pistons, but it was in a controlled manner. It wasn't just the blazing forest fire that was out of control. We utilized the energy in specific directions in order to benefit us. Then we can take people here and there and everywhere and have commerce and enjoy our lives. This is what Pike is getting at. But the people should be regulated by intellect. Now, this isn't just any intellect, though. This isn't the power-hungry intellect bent on enslaving people or making them do his will alone. That is not what Pike is advocating here. He says it must be regulated by intellect, and the intellect here of the people is to the people and the people's force what the slender needle is to the huge mass of wood and iron of the ship. It is its soul. And here's where Brother Nipper had a great insight in laws the other night. I was indicating that Pike was showing us the necessity of the law and the intellect to control, economize the force of the group of people, whatever group they are, in a community, a state, or a nation, or the world, for the benefit of the world. And I was assuming it was the law, and Brother Nipper said, well, it could be the moral intellect, so I've asked him to present that in our next lodge education night, and he lovingly said yes. I've got you pinned down now, Brother Nipper. And it's always pointing to the north. So as the compass helps guide the ship, now it's an intellect that's steering the ship based on what the compass is saying, but the compass always points to true north. So intellect, engaging, controlling, economizing the force of the mass of people, should also guide them true in a direction that is for the benefit of all people. This is what Pike is getting at. The law is for the good as long as it is controlled by justice, right, truth, and love, as he says in the next paragraph. And so I'm approaching 9 minutes right here, so I'm going to stop it there, and I'm going to pick this next couple of paragraphs up in the next video. But this is a very interesting way how Pike sets it up. He uses analogies from nature to incorporate it into the mass of mankind to help us have a direction, to help us have progress and goodness in our lives, because everything is just, merciful, true, and lovingly controlled.